Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. If I could ask you to take your seats. People sitting in back, please feel free to, that last table marked reserve really is not, so please feel free to move up. It's my pleasure as president of the Peterson Institute for International Economics to welcome you and all our friends watching online for an important presentation on tax reforms in India, a vision for the future, by the Finance Minister Arun Jaitley. We will shortly introduce the Minister, but just to say that we are delighted to have him. We had his, I think, probably most useful and most noisy employee, Arvind Subramanian, our dear colleague, here for a speech last month, working with the U.S.-India Business Council, and that was on the new budget. But now to ascend into a different level of the longer-term reform vision coming directly from the Finance Minister is a great opportunity for all of us, and I'm grateful to the Minister for joining us. We're also grateful to have so many friends here from the U.S.-India Business Council, and in that regard, I'd like to call on my colleague Mukesh Aghi, who's president of USIBC, to give a few remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Honorable ministers, ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of USIBC and Peterson Institute, I'd like to welcome you, especially the Honorable Minister, to this event. We did have Arvind give us a state of the budget speech, which was extremely positive. And I think today we are anxious to hear from Minister about going forward, and especially on the tax arena and the budget proposal which have been put together. But I just would like to, on behalf of the U.S. business community, would like to compliment the Indian government in regards to, in the last 12 months, they've been able to bring down the inflation, been able to balance the budget quite assertively, and Moody's ratings moving from stable to positive is a very, very positive sign on the budget put together by the minister and his team itself. I think the U.S. business community is keen to partner with India in a lot of areas, and we are moving quite aggressively in that arena. But I think the focus we have also embarked on with the U.S. business community is trying to see how we can support your initiatives on smart cities, Make in India, Jan Dhan Yojana, and Clean India and Digital India, and beyond that itself. The team at USIBC is focused on trying to see how we can drive the vision of both India and the US of having a trade of almost $500 billion in the next 5 years itself. And that's where the focus is, and we're trying to drive this from a vertical basis itself. I think, let me just take a couple of minutes to introduce the speaker. I think a lot of you know him, but being the finance minister earlier, he was also leading the portfolio on the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, and then earlier on law and justice itself. And I would say that he is an advocate in the Supreme Court, and he also was the Additional Solicitor General of India itself. But I have to say he is one of the best orator I've come across, and especially, Mr. Minister, your speech as the opposition leader, you have really led the NDA government from that perspective. So on behalf of the attendees here, the U.S. business community, Peterson Institute, and USIBC, I'd like to welcome you, and over to you, Mr. Minister. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just while the Minister ascends the stage, just 2 points. First, he's very generously, in recognition of the substance he has to present and the quality of our audience, he's agreed to do this rather informally, seated, and we're hoping to create a tone of interaction, and we will continue with that in a moment. But secondly, just picking up on what our dear friend from the USIBC said, we have been doing a lot of work here at the Peterson Institute about expanding the U.S.-India economic relationship. Arvind Subramanian, of course, was leading that for us. before he went off to actually make policy, for which we're so proud of him. But my predecessor and distinguished colleague, Fred Bergston, had been working with Arvind on that, and will be coming out in the next couple months with a major paper based on that work about the vision we have for U.S.-India economic interchange and development, and we're grateful to the business community as well for helping us do that. But if I may, that was athletic for me. Let me turn it over very much to the great orator, Minister Jacob.
Thank you very much, Adam, for your very gracious invitation to the Peterson Institute. Indeed, an institution of great repute and credibility, and one of our dreams is establishing think tanks in India, a process which is just about started in India, would be to have a large number of similar institutions, considering the size of the country. And also thank you very much for sparing Arvind Subramaniam for us, for what he's been doing. He's been of great value as far as the Ministry of Finance is concerned and Government of India is concerned. You've asked me to speak on the tax vision, a subject which has certainly been surrounded by a lot of questions in the Indian context. But then before I speak on this, just a brief comment on what else has been happening in India. We are now in April 2015. And if a year ago, in March or April 2014, or slightly before that, anyone from India would have come here and spoken in terms of a large number of factors. Well, from a double-digit inflation, we'll be able to be down to less than 5% inflation. We are looking at 2 years from now our fiscal deficit to be below 3%. Our current account deficit this year may be below 1%. Our growth rate from a disappointing figure, suddenly we move up 7.5% last year, targeting about 8% this year. And this has given us the confidence to aspire in terms of a double-digit growth. Now, exactly a year ago, this would have appeared to be a lot of an empty boast, something not reasonably possible. And with the decisive change that took place in India, I think one important aspect of that decisiveness was that after 30 years, we had a government which had a majority on its own in the lower house of parliament. Now, most of the economic decisions in India are either executive decisions or decisions in terms of financial legislation, which is only required to be approved by the lower house. So a lot of financial business in India is only constitutionally required to be approved only by the lower house. It's only when non-financial business requires a legislative change that you require the approval of both houses of parliament. And that is where we run into several challenges, because in the upper house we don't have a clear mandate as yet. Hopefully